Hello everyone, and welcome to another Ensign for Truth video. May we all be due north. In this video, I am going to break down some principles and some things that have been blown out of proportion and out of context, and bring them back into alignment with what really was going on and the context therein. And again, I don't claim to be a prophet or to know everything, but I do know how to listen to the Spirit and discern. And so, with that, let's get started. If you're not a member yet or a subscriber, I guess you should say, please join with us in this. Subscribe, comment, click. I'll put links in there to get yourself some apparel to represent and just to be a part of this truth and the standard, the ensign for truth. So with that, let's get underway. There's a certain groups or a certain group, of people online that are bashing and, taking apart the LDS religion. And just to clarify, it's Mormon. Mormonism is the same thing as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, because we know that Christ, when he was here, he taught that he is the way, and that if we are to be a member of his church, that it must carry his name and his structure, which we know now is a prophet such as himself, and also 12 apostles and delegation through authority, and that's where we get the general authorities. But we are told to follow the prophet and understand that he is the one person at any given time or any given dispensation to be the person who we, as his saints, follow and listen to. So this particular video is or has to do with Joseph Smith, and there is so many different things and views and opinions out there about him, and all that comes to mind is the prophecy that his name will be taken in the mouths of many for either good or bad. And we're seeing now that there is way more people that are out there trying to take away the truthfulness of his testimony and his calling and the things he did. So let's just break down a few questions right out of the gate. So what is or what are the golden plates and or the Book of Mormon? We know them to be antiquitous or of an old ancient time writings such as journals or revelations that were written down over the course of about 1,000 years, from 600 BC to about 425-ish AD, which is another testament of our Savior Jesus Christ and his ministry amongst men. And just as we know the Bible is, back to Adam and Eve and up to Jesus Christ and then Jesus Christ until the end of the book, where his apostles and the authority in the church just kind of fell into an apostate state where the Lord and his power and the things that were on the earth in certain dispensations had been done away with, and was either closing or getting ready to open up another dispensation. And we know that there are writings from prophets such as Noah, Enoch. Obviously, we don't have the book of Enoch, but it goes clear back to Adam and Eve, down to Moses. We have Abraham in there, obviously, and his covenant and promise, which we'll do content on soon. And brother Jared brother of Jared is who wrote these things down, and they wrote them on plates and metal. It was their source of paper, or keeping the records to endure time. So Jared was um, a person that was a notable character in the Bible, and so the brother of Jared was Moriancumer. He was the one who sought the Lord, and in that history he talks about building some barges too that were tight like unto a dish, and him and his family and several provisions sailed away from where they were over there and came to the Americas. So the book has that history at the end, but it really is a book of their wars and battles and things that went on that caused their destruction. But in the beginning of the book, Nephi says, "I've been born of goodly parents," and he begins his story, and so that's where the compilation is best suited to help people understand that they left Jerusalem. There was a great destruction to come about. Prophet Lehi had received revelation to flee from Jerusalem and Babylonia and get out of there because the destruction was coming. And so he took his family and left, and they got into the wilderness and realized, oh, well, we didn't bring some important things with us, so we need to go back and get the books that are important for our inheritance, for our future generations to know about. So in the book, and I don't need to go into it in great detail, Lehi commands his sons to go back and to obtain these records from King Laban, who is a very prominent figure in the Bible. Zedekiah, during those times anyway, they are plausible and real people. Goes back and through murmuring and very much trial and tribulation, they finally acquire the plates, and they come back down to Lehi shoreline, and they were successful. So that's where we get the Book of Mormon from. Um, and then it was kind of like a continuance from that point on. They continued to teach and understand those records, study them, but also write down new things that God commanded them to write down. So this particular book made its way um, all over the Americas and maybe even down to South America and back up. We don't know. We just know that the records were uh, recorded and kept as a compilation as civilizations moved around. And we know now, having some history, which I can show a couple of different things, some clips on here that will show just the Nephite history and where they found these things, which is kind of the northern part of the United States. And there has been several artifacts and things that I'm sure have not been found, or some that have been found like in excess. There's so much proof and different things that point to the fact that the Book of Mormon was the way that they kept their records. And so this particular record of a compilation of the Prophet Mormon was his job to kind of put everything together in one, succession or chronological order, and to give it to his son Moroni, who would later close the book and give the promise that the Lord gives to each and every individual that reads it, that if they would read with real intent, with faith, and believing that these things that they have read are true, that they will be given an answer by the gift and the power of the Holy Ghost, which I mentioned in the other video is the source of all truth and light. And excuse me, the plates were set in the ground, and we know from Moroni's account that he constructed basically a concrete box with a rock or stone over it to seal these records and keep them from the elements. And there's something really unique about that. A lot of people take into consideration, well, if the the hole in the ground or the chest that was made out of concrete was in the ground and that Joseph pulled those out from there with the Urim and Thummim or spectacles and the sword of Laban and things. Why isn't it still there? And I can just point to one quick example. I used to do concrete and construction, and I know that elements in science, we're always looking for some kind of proof and, facts, and just have to see it to believe. And that's totally contradictory to faith. But what goes on with elements when they are exposed to, um, let's say, water, air, freezing, heat, um, they begin to crack, pock, break, brittle. They basically decompose. And this particular stone, because we know stone doesn't necessarily break down, or it takes a long time to erode or be broken down, and a lot of pressure has to be given to it. So this particular rock that was over the box that was made by Moroni of man-made materials decomposed. Once Joseph had removed the stone and basically, went about translating the Book of Mormon with this box in the ground, it just decomposed. That there's no better way of putting it than, it was made by mud and sand and cement. Like, that's some of the most volatile ingredients possible. And with water and moisture and obviously snowstorms, heat in the summertime, it would just basically continue to slowly dissipate until it was rubble and stubble and stones. And so, there's people, and why isn't that still there? Well, because science would tell you that it's not going to be. Um, we also know that there was other accounts that I'll share about Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, and how they were able to find a small cave or a tomb and found very many different records and I guess you could call them histories or testaments of different people, prophets, things that they didn't even know existed. And it's very easy to portray that, well, where's that at? Where's those records? And where's the actual plates now? And it all has to do with God's will and what he wants for us to believe, see, or otherwise. And if you're starting to put him in a bracket where you think, well, that's not, if he does it for one person, he needs to do it to everyone. Well, it is his will. It's what he wants. And I also know that he does not like to be mocked, and he will not be mocked. And also the casting pearl, before swine type thing, where something of such high value and sacredness and importance to mankind is something that is extremely valuable and something that he's not just going to take lightly. And so with that, I'm going to continue to answer questions, but it's very important to understand that he is the one that's in control. And we're not meant to understand completely his will or his understanding. We will someday, sometime, but for now, it's a lot of faith. It's a lot of believing in a concept or seeing something that is there, or that it has historical, reference to, knowing that it exists and then believing it. And like I told you, or I've mentioned before, our compass, the things that we use to guide us is what we use, but we also need to use our actions, our steps, our works to bring to pass the getting due north or getting to the end of the trail or wherever we need to get out of the situation we're in the wilderness. So, Lehi was a wonderful prophet. He took his family with this Leona, which was given to him, to see and understand God's will. And as long as they were righteous, they were led. And so this particular Urim and Thummim was actually placed in the ground with the plates and sword of Laban and some other items that were, for use of either keeping them for historical use or also to translate the book later on, whatever the case may be. That truth is known pretty, I guess you could say, commonly. So the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. It's a set of writings that were compiled and brought forth after a period of complete darkness on the earth, which we know as the apostasy. And then Joseph Smith in the spring of 1820 had, his first vision, and we'll get into that further, but there is some other context that we need to add and also be aware of. So, treasure digging. Treasure digging has been around since Adam. All the way till today, there's people seeking treasure and finding lost artifacts or gold or whatever the case may be. There is groups and people, associations that go out into the oceans and on land, and they seek treasure. So the fact that they're saying the church is, started or founded on treasure digging, that's a little bit of a far-fetched claim, but there is truth in the fact that there was treasure digging going on, and Joseph Smith himself did partake in that particular thing. I think that any one of us, if we had some kind of a whim or an idea that there was a treasure somewhere, we would seek it. Is it of God or is it, supposed to be found? Well, I guess if you find it, you know the answer. The problem here, we always try to, conceptualize man and what their intentions are and what they're doing. Well, Joseph Smith in that period of time, if he's shown gold plates in the ground, let's just use this example. If he's shown gold plates in the ground, and he knows that he's supposed to, bring it out and translate it and do, and that the Lord told him that this is not for, monetary gain or otherwise, it's immediately going to spark tons of interest in the fact that there's got to be more things like this around. And so, being that that's the case, and even before, of course, there's several people that are coming to a new land. Are they not going to explore it when they're just coming from England and other places where they haven't even walked on certain sections of the country yet? So everyone's going to have a pick and a shovel. The 49ers in California, the gold rush, it's commonplace. But yet the church was created on treasure digging. Absolutely not. They're claiming that Joseph Smith was using supernatural powers to control the narrative or to control the situation. I don't believe that either, but there is proof that he, the way that it's looked at is that he was the one controlling the narrative. Well, I think we all control our own narratives in our lives. We can't remove the variables that are there. Simply, I guess a better way to put it is we all have our agency. We have the ability to decide, but in our dimension or where we are, everyone else is still inside their dimension and doing their life and their things that they are, looking for or doing or have goals to do. So to say he controlled the narrative is like saying I don't control my narrative. I don't know. I guess that's just trying to put it into context that each and every individual has their own narrative in life. There's historical facts that said it's, 1824, not 1820. Well, if you read the first vision and you listen to it and you understand, uh, we tend to put ourselves in a timeline that we are used to. And if you read it carefully, it says, quote unquote, in the year of our Lord, 1820. And that means that it is God's calendar. It's not our calendar. We have a Roman calendar that has been, you know, made by man and over time and switched to and followed. It's not the Hebraic or the El Shaddai, the actual calendar of God. And to put it short, the El Shaddai or God's calendar is basically, um, this is the easiest way to say it. The Roman calendar is 365 days, and the the El Shaddai is 360. So when you do that math over a period of time, it would end up being several years, probably 3.5, 4, 5 years difference in your start time and moving forward. So he did have the vision in 1820 in the year of the Lord, and we are understanding it from a perspective that's now been given us as a Roman calendar instead of understanding that he was simply stating in the year of the Lord, 1820. There is a very important point that is contemporary evidence or content that can play into absolutely, how it's understood or perceived, such as the calendar and time and just, understanding that these things were written at a later date and, remembering them and having them written down perfect. Nobody's perfect. Thing was, needing to be said is that, we know that David Copperfield actually made the Statue of Liberty disappear. And any of us nowadays would be like, come on, how the heck do you do that? Well, as he was, captivating the audience, the whole audience was actually turning so slowly that they could not feel it. And by the time that he got around to the other side and then flips the curtain, the whole audience had been turned around facing another direction. So it's very important to understand that there are so many different ways that man, as we understand, can be easily, misled or, understand the realities that are from a perspective of just like needing to see to believe. So it's, it's so much more than just being a treasure digger or, practicing charlatanism or whatever you want to call it, sorcery, magic. Yes, there's equinoxes, there's time frames, 2 o'clock or the, lunar eclipse or, the equinoxes, all that stuff is relevant for necromancy or, to supposedly do it the way that they understand energies and portals and things being opened up. And in fact, this eclipse that just happened was some of that. Um, the times and the seasons are for us to know and discern, as the prophet Daniel would say. And so it's for us to take, and in Genesis, we know in 1:14 that these things are times and seasons. Now, seasons, they're not summer, spring, fall, and winter. It's periods of time that are on God's calendar, the El Shaddai, and different festivals and certain things that go on, like Passover and Pentecost, and just I don't have time to go into it right now. I will do a whole episode on the Jewish calendar and how it relates to us these days. But it's important to take that into context that, our understanding of seasons and times is so much more different than really what the base understanding or the calendar that our Heavenly Father uses. So understanding the calendar and the time frame here, when he says that he had to visit in 1820, he did. And Moroni actually visited him while he was in his sleep, and we'll go over some of that stuff. But he was strictly commanded to go, find the place. He knew where it was. After he found the place, he tried to remove the plates, and he was told, no, you need to prepare and, come to the site once a year, every year. The time is not now. You'll know when it's time. And so he had to go back, and, now that it was 4 years, 4 times that he had gone, back and forth from the site, and the whole time he is, involved in treasure digging and trying to find other things in the meantime. And that's where a lot of this stuff gets misconstrued and misunderstood. But we also know that the revelations and the things that he writes later in 1832 and beyond, we're looking at it like he's doing it in the moment, and we're using the time in which he wrote it to clarify when he actually did it. What's going on here is the same thing that happened in the Bible and also the Book of Mormon. Each and every one of these revelations that are given were given to him at a certain time. And did he write it down immediately in that moment? No. There was a lot of, time lapse, if you will, between writing down the things that he had seen or had as revelation. And we know that the Bible and the Book of Mormon is the same concept. It's civilizations of people who wrote down the things they've seen at a later time. And so those things, to use as factual time frame is, along with the calendar, is all, yeah, that's, if anything, that's a convoluted, approach. But we know that scriptures and through the course of time, God has given us, the things that we need as a human civilization to return to Him. We know that the Holy Bible and the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price are all important books, and they are considered the true gospel or standard works of the gospel in our hands. So I guess to close on that particular point, it's very important to understand that there's so much information. And I'm just going to use an example. A lot of times people will say, well, there's no way that these little symbols on the plates can, mean so much or have so many different letters, thousands of letters and words. Truth is this: God gives us the information, and then man writes it down. Man is flawed. Man has weaknesses. In fact, in the Book of Mormon, we read in several instances where Brother Jared, even Nephi, several people are like, gosh, I'm not very good at writing these things down. And there's certain ones that have certain, plain and precious things that are very important. And then there's others that are, I guess you could just say occurrences or things that are of importance, but not as important. And so with the scriptures being written down like in times of old, we know that Moses, went up on the mount, spent 40 days up there, 40 nights. Everybody thought he was done for. He comes down and everything's written on stone. And there's a scriptural or a connotation there that is, when Christ says, I will write you a law, or I will write a new law into your heart and take your heart of stone and create, a heart of good and spirit. Well, there's some symbolism in that. Just because in that time frame, they were literally writing on stone. And it's very important to understand that this overload of information, it's just like nowadays. If I was to try to explain to you a topic or a college dissertation, something where I have to write several pages and paragraphs of content, if I'm going to send you this dissertation so that you can read it, I can't send it to you as a whole big mess unless I shrink it down into a PDF, into some kind of a size that can be sent through that means. So it's the same concept with scripture. There are so many different revelations and things that are given to us by God, but that man, being flawed and trying to, relay the message, actually, does it in their own way and in their own language. And it's like a PDF. It's shrunk down. So it's very easily understood that, a page with like 6 figures on it could be a whole story, a whole complete history of a civilization or of a revelation that they've seen. And so to sit there and say that, well, he didn't just etch out THE, the book, BOOK, you know what I mean? Like, that's just hideous to think that, that's how we understand writing now in 2024. And we have technology that can do, these things so much easier. But in that time, no, there wasn't. And we know that, ancient Hebrew and certain languages, in fact, the Book of Mormon states, a mixture of Hebraic or Hebrew and Egyptian was used. And later on, Joseph Smith said the same thing, that they were a mixture of them and that they were confirmed to be actual, hieroglyphics or writings that portray whole stories, just like in the pyramids and stuff like that that we know about historically. There is literally like on a wall of stone etched in, and you can look at it, and it's like watching a whole movie or understanding a whole movie. So again, to say that it is just not possible or feasible is asinine to think that. I'm going to be doing more content later, and again, please, I have to throw this in there. Comment, like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, continue to get videos of this content. I'd love to build a community and interact with you folks. So the Urim and Thummim is, the term that they are using as, this particular seer stone or, this object to see. And we know it to be as the Leona, a compass, Urim and Thummim. Abraham, we know, used this particular instrument to see the ways of the Lord or his times and seasons. And we know that he said that 1,000 years is of a day to God and so on. So there are different perspectives. And again, man being flawed is going to think, well, I can't comprehend 1,000 years in one day. That's because we're not God yet. We can't understand the things that we will one day, and that's all we can say about that. But the fact that he called it a Urim and Thummim is because it is its name. It's that object that is used to see into the future or the things of God. So to state that it's just a made-up title by W. W. Phelps in the 1830s, it's no. He was only referring to it as something that they knew how to refer to, which is in the Bible. With God, all things are possible, and good. There is God factor and there is man factor, science, several different things, as I've already mentioned. So, to say you want to find a box made out of sand, cement, and ingredients from 1820 even to now, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't be there. Especially being exposed to elements, it's very easy to understand that much. to say that Joseph Smith transitioned into uh, being a prophet from a man is it's literally what he did. We know that Moses killed somebody before he was called to be a prophet of God. Like there's imperfection and flaw in man, not necessarily does it, God calls the weak and the, the sick or the people that need help. And then those people, when they finally realize, help other people. And that's where there's a transition. It's not, Joseph Smith was a treasure digger and now all of a sudden he's using all these principles to guide the church. Not at all. It's the work of the Lord. It's forming him into the prophet that he needed to be by learning from those things. And again, there's several different instances that attest to the fact that he was a man in training, not only in life, but in the ways of the Lord. And so to blame his man and his flaws as a physical being is judging, and we're not supposed to do that. But even if you want to judge because you have that right, you cannot take what you are judging from your perspective to be what is truth or not. The truth is Joseph Smith was a prophet, and still has a testimony sealed in blood. And we know that the Book of Mormon and the plates did exist through several years on the continent here, and then also the three witnesses never retracted their witnesses, their testimonies, and several of them wanted to actually apologize for having gone away from uh, believing. And there's so many instances in the Book of Mormon and in the Bible that literally God shows you an angel, and yet you still are like, nah. You know what I mean? So again, it's all in how you want to take it. I'll leave you guys to that particular assumption, but you've got to use, some kind of compass, some kind of direction to find north, because you can't just do any direction. You've got to do north to find your bearings. Two very quick points is, the power of three or third time's a charm. It's relevant, but um, God calls who He's going to call. If each and every one of us was to be a prophet, I think we all are in a certain degree. The things that we share from our knowledge and our perspectives can help other human beings. That's just how it's set up. But there is only one particular human being on the earth at any given time or any dispensation that has all of the keys and the authority, the priesthood, the power of God, to act and to open or reveal, see, prophesy, uh, in alignment with His will. So it's very important to understand that, these particular human beings, such as, Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris, Sidney Rigdon, Sam Lawrence, it doesn't matter who they are. If they're not called of God, it's not for them to do. There's no other way of putting it. It's who God chooses to call and ordain as a prophet and give those keys through proper succession of priesthood authority. And so we'll go into that also, down the road. There'll be more topics and discussion on priesthood authority, but it's very important to understand that there's only one of them on the earth at any given time that is the mouthpiece of the Lord. Today, it's Russell M. Nelson. Um, Back in Joseph Smith's time, he was ordained a prophet and, did his works. We have history that shows us that Jesus was even considered a prophet, or, that one person. And there's always delegation of authority, which is, again, the 12 apostles, 70. It's all in the Bible, and it's all clear back into times of Adam. how Christ and his church is set up. So understanding how prophets work, such as like a Noah, if you pay attention in the Bible, each one of these particular stories, I guess you could call them, or doctrines and revelations are shown to be, I guess, how's it? I don't want to go into too much detail on it at this time because I'm not focusing on this particular subject, but each one of them is given a new name. It's when they become, you know, I guess you could say called of God, or are going to do work for the Lord, and they are, either baptized or given a new name. There's a whole bunch of doctrine that goes into that, but each and every one of them were a man before, and then afterwards they were a different person. So it's important to notice that Joseph Smith was a man. He treasure dug. He was involved with the charlatans and their ways, and then he was called to be a prophet and became. And that's why there was, further down the line, there was a whole lot of his revelations and things became a whole lot more in depth and I guess you could say complex. And so that just shows that he was also, while he was learning the ways of man and doing the things that he was doing, he was gaining education just like any of us would, but going through life. But to say that he is making up his narrative and trying to control it, again, it's common knowledge that each and every one of us direct our own lives. But God was forming him into a prophet who could, give us the revelations and the things that. Sorry, I had to change the light in my camera so you guys can see clear on my ugly mug. So they are going over, if he's called of God, why is he taking Alvin, who he was told to, bring his brother, who's the right person? Well, he goes and then, Alvin obviously we know dies later, and there's further doctrine about that we know in Doctrine and Covenants that explains that he was taken from this earth and that he was still saved in the kingdom because he wasn't a believer. And I think that is basically the point to it. The good Lord wanted to show him, knowing from the beginning, the work that his brother was going to do, and to give him a chance to bask in the joy of knowing that he was related to the prophet of the latter days. And so, however you want to look at it, and then again, you have those who are saying that he dug up the grave and did things, that are kind of dark. Um, there's, I don't know the word, I think it's necrophiliac or something like that looks up, digs up graves, and it's nowhere near, I guess you could call it necromancy, but the fact of the matter is he went and dug it up out of respecting, his grave and, proving to people that, and again, we don't need to go into it, but think about the fact that there was a digging going on initially when they placed him in the ground. And then those who are trying to dig for treasure go in an unsacred and polite manner to dig it up and to try to find, if they buried the treasure with him. And the argument is that there wasn't any, leftover dirt or, site from the grave being dug up. Again, we have to look into, it's easy for a grave to dissipate or basically go away. Every year in our town, we've done a cemetery cleanup, and there are gravestones and grave sites that are every bit of 2 centuries old, and you can't even tell that they're there. In fact, you kind of feel bad because you're stepping on all kinds of graves and trying to be respectful, but you have no idea where those things are buried or what's been buried with them. So again, it's just a convoluted theory to think that this is some kind of a cop out, or I don't know. I think it was more about respecting uh, his grave burial site, but we won't go into that at this time. It's a very important point to make that we're given, earthly parents, an earthly father and mother, and just like we have an earthly, heavenly father and mother, but the point behind it is that they are there to guide us. That's why there's the commandment, honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days may be long upon the earth. It has several different variables and points of doctrine to be understood, but it's like my mother and father. Um, if I would have just listened to the things that they had told me over the course of my, almost 40 years of life, where would I be? And it's obviously hindsight's 2020, and we have to go through certain things to figure certain things out. It's just like a toddler. You tell them don't touch the stove; it's hot. They go in, they touch the stove, they burn, and then they don't do it anymore. It's the same thing as Joseph Smith's father knew in his heart that he was the father of the prophet, and he was encouraging him to uh, get in line with God's will. And so the whole grave digging thing and all of that stuff. And he even states that, you know, someday, somehow, he trusted that the Son of Righteousness would illuminate or illumine the heart of the boy and help him understand why he was told to take Alvin. And I think I already covered that. But again, it's extremely important to realize where or who we're getting the information from and their love and their intent behind it. I think a very important source of context at this moment is to understand that, again, man is flawed. Um, we know from the Book of Mormon and Mosiah, um, we're told that, man is a natural enemy to God unless they submit and, obey and do or act kind of with the same characteristics as Christ or as a child. If that's the symbolism there is that we are children. We are constantly uh, bumping our heads on the wall, touching warm stoves. It's just, you know, to say that, Joseph Smith, gets this revelation and then he goes and continues down the road of treasure digging. It's just like saying that I was told not to jump on the trampoline too high or else I'll break my arm. But I still go out there and bust flips and, huck and do until literally I break my arm. So it's again agency in man and then God's will and our own narrative or desire to be obedient and follow. And so there's also two different outcomes. And, the one is what God already knows is going to happen, but it's a learning process for us. And so again, to state that, he's using all these things, it's the same concept as if today, um, this particular person that is arguing with facts would say, let's just say I found out or I know that there is a $1 billion treasure somewhere hidden in a hill somewhere. And I know, I've given you some kind of insight as to where it's at. Are you not going to do every single thing possible to try to find that? You would. And if you deny it, you're lying, because we know that it's in our inner nature to try the risk and get the reward. And the greater the risk, the greater the reward. So if there's $1 billion treasure out there, you're going to do whatever. It's just like a lottery ticket. People play the lottery. They are throwing superstitious numbers and different things out there to try to just get lucky. And yeah, there's a learning process, a lot of money spent, a lot of time, a lot of effort into, trying to foresee the future. And it's almost impossible for us to do that. There have been some funny stories of after the fact that, somebody used their grandma's birth date or something, and it worked. Boom, that's all fine and dandy, great. But it doesn't mean that that person didn't, uh, he didn't know beforehand. He was trying something out, just like Joseph Smith was trying to figure out treasure digging and finding treasure, because it's of great worth at that time and in that era. And again, like the gentleman says in the video, it's a time period of culture that is just barely landing in America and exploring the frontier as we know it. And so it's one of those things that has to be really taken in the right context to understand that it's a treasure hunt. I mean, every step you are walking in a new treasure hunt, you're finding a new country. And so to put your life and the narrative that you're living as treasure digging and your reason for starting a church, no, it's the man that he was as a flawed enemy to God, trying to become wealthy and find treasure that he had knowledge of that was on the earth. So again, it's all in plausibility and in context. It's just, you've got to understand all of that aspects. Moment of clarification again. Joseph Smith did not create the church. He restored the church. The word restoration means to bring back to its original form. I mean, you can get the Webster's dictionary out and elaborate on synonyms and different understandings or adjectives that describe it, or adverbs, I guess would be the word. But it's important to understand that man is natural and we're an enemy to God. So let's just take, for instance, our Father, or our Heavenly Father, we know him. But let's just say our dad on the earth, your dad, my dad. He comes to me and says, "Hey, I have something of extreme value that you need to share with the world, and this is so important to the salvation of human beings that you have got to do whatever it takes to bring it to light. Go make me proud. You know, I'm going to stumble. I'm going to make mistakes in my journey and along the way. But it's really unique to understand that God loves us so much that he's literally using treasure digging and treasure seeking as the foundation of this story. The items that are so valuable that were found and used to bring about the Book of Mormon, all the treasure digging and all of the charlatan stuff and the, equinoxes and the magic and all that stuff is of the world. It's of man and their understanding. But yet it's really unique to understand the symbolism. There was a treasure. There was something to be found, and that was of great value. So of course, a person growing up in that time period is going to explore, try to find anything of great value, let alone a book of scripture. So to put it into plain layman's terms, as they say, God has this great book, a marvelous work and a wonder. It's a treasure. It's something that is sought for by so many people, the truth. Would he not use the same exact principles or, uh, you know, attempt to get anyone, let alone Joseph Smith? The point is, Joseph Smith was called of God. He was his one prophet, his one person who was going to restore the church. And in order to restore it and to give it clout and its own credibility, it needed to be a full process of treasure digging. And it's painting the picture that treasure digging is the way that we can find things of great value. So again, it's such a convoluted idea to think that treasure digging is how the church was founded. Joseph Smith founded the church as far as, restoring it goes. It's not created, or he's not the innovator of the truthfulness therein or the gospel doctrine. That was Jesus Christ. And it's the same gospel that goes clear back to Adam. So just wanted to clarify on that one. So there's a reference to Willard Chase, um, who apparently doesn't like the prophet Joseph Smith or the belief that he was a prophet. He basically is the man who states that Samuel Lawrence went to the hill with him. Um, he was told that Emma was the person that he needed to take with him. But as again, man or flawed, if you were to want to seek out a treasure and you knew, like your father had told you, that this is a treasure that's out there, um, would you not seek out the most intelligent and, seasoned veteran in that particular um, field of study or, of action? So this Samuel Lawrence was a very well-known figure in treasure digging, and of course he takes him up there, and then they use again the third time's a charm. It seems to be that we are, again, like little children, and we're trying to figure this out, and we are constantly repeating ourselves as parents. But it is important to understand that this Sam Lawrence was a figure of treasure digging and understood it. And so when they're looking in and they see, and Sam says, "Do you see? Do you see? Do you see?" And then Joseph sees, it's because this whole process of him understanding treasure digging and being able to understand different energies or things he's perceiving uh, at different times and in the will of the Lord. And so it's kind of a unique symbolism to show that even the Lord can use, evil people to bring about his great work. In fact, they're probably very crucial and key to um, such a thing as treasure digging, because treasure digging is really a form of, um, well, to put it lightly, yes, it would be a form of trying to get gain dishonestly, or just like betting in a casino or gambling. And this is why the church, goes against these things, is because the Lord said, by the sweat of your brow, you shall eat your bread, or you'll till the earth and work and earn your way and not be idle and, just sit around and be lazy. Um, it all has to do with that. And so he's taking the steps of learning and going through, bumping his head on the wall until he finally realizes, okay, I'm going to go around that wall. And he has to have certain people, such as Sam Lawrence, help him to, understand certain steps and things that he didn't understand yet. So to say that, why didn't the Lord say it was him or who? We know now why, but Emma Smith, just to cover that point, is the person who he is told to take up there, and then there's record of, black carriage and horse and lamp paint or whatever, excuse me, a few other things. There is a very important concept with that, if you're going to go, let's say again, your father told you that there's this treasure out there and you don't want anybody else to know about it, there is one person that I can think of in my mind that I would know and trust 100%, and that's my wife. That's my, if I was going to rob a bank or, I won the lottery, I wouldn't go out telling everybody. There's one person that I would tell. And just to use the bank reference, if I'm going to go rob a bank, I'm going to go in a black car with black tint, black clothes, ski mask. And I'm going to tell my wife, you're the one that's going to drive me. And you're going to go and you're going to stand outside the car, or you're going to sit in the car and wait. And you're going to, be my lookout and cover my back because I trust you. And that's the same exact concept here. The Lord told him to take Emma because Emma was his true love and true protector. So she's there and she's told not to look. And I would tell my wife the same thing. Don't look. Don't watch it. The less you know, the better it is for you. You know what I mean? If we get caught. So, and then Emma prays and she's, trying to call upon help. And that'd be the same thing my wife would be doing in the car. She'd be gripping the steering wheel, praying like, please just, don't let him get caught, whatever. And then I would go and do the act, and obviously coming down from there, he's hit, and there's impedances, I guess you could call them, along the way. So to say that, he can't grab a hold of I guess what we call 40-pound bag or a 40-pound plate. I mean, I'm a 250-pound dude. I've worked with concrete bags and construction and stuff, concrete 80-pound bags. I mean, that's double the weight, but if I had to, I could take that particular thing and run with it. It just would be very difficult. But there's a factor here that you're not taking into consideration, and that is the Lord says in the scriptures that I will be on your right and your left, and I will go before you, and my angels will minister unto you. And so as he's running, just because you can't see them, there are angels and those who are helping him protect this particular precious item. And so, and we know in the saints books and in a couple other, like the work of the glory and stuff like that, that it talks about how he was running and he actually swung the plates were like wrapped in a sheet or some kind of like a hobo on a stick type thing, but it was literally the whole thing was wrapped in a bag and he clubbed one of the dudes with it in the swinging motion. And so there was a lot of credibility to the fact that he was running and each one of these. And then here's this, why wouldn't all three of them just all together go stop Joseph? Well, think about this. If you're going to try to steal that treasure, or if I'm going to rob the bank, you're going to do it as a one-man job. You're going to, take your own team and make it happen. You're not going to tell me because you don't want to give up or share the found treasure. So the same concept applies. Each one of these men were kind of spread out along the forest, knowing the direction towards his house and where he was going to go, and they were all looking to get game themselves. So each one of these people, as Joseph approaches them, is trying to put up a fight and get it from them, and he's able to withstand them because he was a very strong man. He had a bum leg, but the leg, I mean, we know in the stories of the scriptures, Jesus made people stand up and walk that had bum legs. So to, you know, put that out of context or to say that it's not possible is just a full-blown lack of faith or understanding. But he runs and dislocates his fingers, probably from carrying that or punching somebody, whatever, like they say, jabbing his eye out, who knows. But what we do know is that they were heavy and he had fend them off. And he did so with the help of the Lord, because the angel Moroni even said, the time will be a specific time, and you are not to let these things fall into anyone's hands by any means. And so, same thing with me. If I was to, jack this treasure that my father told me to take and make sure you get it, it's worth so much that you can't let it fall into the hands of anybody. I would kill to make sure that that happened. And so the same thing applied here, and he was able to, run very swiftly, um, with adrenaline. And we know that as a human being, that there's things that we do that our brain overpowers our body and tells us it's go time. And that same thing happened with him, I'm sure, running down the hill and trying to get back to his getaway vehicle. And so anyone, trying to clobber you or do anything, shock and adrenaline can be chalked up to that. But the fact of the matter is, Emma was not to see it at that time. She may or may not have been in full belief of the situation. She was going along with it. She may have been a co-conspirator, as they say, but I don't think it's that. I think it's she just was his closest confidant and person that was willing or worthy enough to accompany him with true intent, not to try to take the plates, not to get gain from them, nothing of that sort. She believed in her husband, just like my wife believes in me and your partners believe in you. So again, you guys are all okay to judge this as you will, but the way you guys are arguing this is just childish. It seems like there's no sense of logic. Again, it's important to understand that God knows the beginning from the end. And the argument of, why is he showing these spectacles and this particular, these items, and then he doesn't need to use them? Well, it does have to go into, again, a new name. And we know in Revelations 2, it explains that to each person who is basically born again or is given a new name by doing certain things, certain ordinances, um, is given a new name. And the new name is that stone. And so each and every one of us as an individual actually have our own Urim and Thummim, our own guidance. And there's a tie with the spirit, and then there's the actual physical objects, as we know them in the world. But the the symbolism or the teaching there is that once you've been given a new name, like we see with Saul on the way, and then he sees and he's turned into Paul, um, you know, Simon became Peter, Abraham became Abraham, Isaac and Jacob became Israel. There's constant, you know, examples of this, but the point is you're given a new name because you have, made covenants and certain things with the Lord. And you, at that point, with your faith and your understanding, are working at remaining as faithful as possible to those agreements. And so he also agrees to guide you with the Spirit. And so the physical object doesn't necessarily need to be in play. It is what is dictated through his heart and his spirit that is of importance. The physical objects are just the hard copy. It's just like I mentioned earlier. If I was to do a dissertation or research and all that, and then send it to you, I would send it in a PDF form. But that doesn't mean that there isn't actual hard copy evidence in books, computer, the library, the things that are physical that are uh, the items, the hard copies of where I got that information from. So again, to say that, why does he need the book? Why does he need the plates? They're just a hard copy. And that's why Moroni said, when you're done, just give them back to me and I'll take them and hang on to them. It's because the hard copy isn't the necessary or the needed information. It's the information in the PDF. It's the dissertation that teaches the concept. So again, to think that, why is God a God of confusion, this, that, and that, he's not a God of confusion. He's actually very intelligent, and he understands the beginning from the end, the end from the beginning. It's all one. The eternal around him. He is not able to be fooled or, not see it for what it is. There's no, pulling the wool over Heavenly Father's eyes. It's not possible. But us as man, 100%, we can have we have the veil, we have things that block us that are just, we don't understand or see with our spiritual eye. And so for him, he could have the hard copy in Texas and be up in New York and still be given that information via the download of his new name, his stone. And that is the concept behind the Urim and the seer stone. Each and every one of us are given this when we perform certain ordinances or become, say, a prophet or what's the word I'm looking for, like an elder or a teacher, minister, apostle, pastor, whatever, depending on how God has you to set up to be used in his work in his vineyard, um, is how that particular stone takes place. And there's actually books and different, um, references to these things, but one of them is a really good book. It's called Visions of Glory by John Pontius, and it's an excellent book. I encourage you guys to read it if you haven't already, and to understand a little bit more about it. But he basically goes into detail about how each and every person has their own, like a portal. That's why people say they see a light at the end of the tunnel, and like going through it, it feels comfortable. It's like what we know is, people die and say they died and came back. They seen a light at the end of the tunnel or whatever. That we created this particular portal, and part of that portal is our seer stone, our actual stone in that book. He talks about a certain stone or rock that came from Cornerstone, Canada, that actually has living, I guess you could call it microorganisms in them, or like a living organism within it. It's a living rock. It's just like a living spring, like a water that's constantly flowing. And they use this to construct the temple and have a diameter of Jerusalem. And there's some spiritual um, connotations or understandings for those things, but it allows you to think and act with the spirit and to know your direction that you need to go. It's your compass. It's your uh, Leona, your enzyme, and it's what guides you due north. So it's not it's not second sight. It's actual third time's a charm for a reason. There's symbolism in it, and it's necessary for basically a testimony or preparation therein to prepare you for what you're seeing, so that there's no mistake. That when you see it and when you finally understand it, you are ready for it and you use it for its purpose. Yes, we need credibility, and Sam Lawrence was exactly that for the Lord. He was the person at that time that was a credible figure, um, that knew about treasure digging and finding, and to have him be the person that opens up the understanding for Joseph is symbolic there. It's definitely him using someone who is a veteran, seasoned veteran, or pro in that particular field, and in doing that and going with him and seeing this particular thing, he literally, because he was more advanced in it, seen him before Joseph, and then Joseph later, after 3 tries, sees him. It's that third rule 3. It's preparing you to see him. And it took a seasoned veteran, someone who was already on that level, to be able to tell him, don't you see it? And then he has to see it 3 times until he finally gets it and sees it with his eye. And then to go, one step deeper, it's important to understand that God's not just going to show you everything because it can condemn you. It can be something that it goes against, his desire for you. So that's why it's important that faith is a concept here. It's the hope of things that aren't seen. So, it's the symbolism there. He's looking at this particular instrument, wanting to see it, but he doesn't because he doesn't have the proper faith or the proper understanding, proper works. And then later, the third try, he finally gives enough of that faith out of his being to go, oh my goodness, yes, I do see that. And anytime we have a miracle happen to us, or we understand, something hindsight, of course we're like astounded by it. We're like, wow, I never would have thought. That's the same thing. He was staring into this box, trying to see the things that someone who was seasoned could see, and he couldn't. But then he kept going with faith and with that desire, and after 3 tries, he was able to see them. It wasn't to, justify that Sam was a better seer than him or otherwise or whatever. The point is Joseph was called to be the prophet and to restore the church and translate the Book of Mormon. Samuel Lawrence was called to show Joseph how to be a seasoned treasure digger for finding. It's very important to state that God is not conforming to black magic. He has his ways, and us as man, again, flawed. We have our understanding, and wherever those two things mesh, we can sit and speculate and say, a certain hour, 2 o'clock is when, people are set apart, or, their ordination or their consecration anointing in the temple, those things. It all just has to play with the understanding that God has a purpose and we are his instruments. And so just like an alarm clock tells us when to get up and go to work or to do our things that we need to do, it's the same thing. It's a time set for doing sacred things of another dimension or intermeshing interdimensionally the time frame of God and ours. John C. Bennett was another man, a flawed person, and he used polygamy and the revelation to gain his own benefit. And I think all of us do that in some way, shape, or form in our lives. When we understand something, we use it for our knowledge. Like I mentioned in another video, we fall back on our knowledge, on what we know to better our lives or to help us move forward. And sometimes we have to do, messed up things or things that we're not proud of to get there. And, I failed my parents and my family members and went through a lot of hardship and pain and anguish through addiction and through, my foibles and the things that I did in my younger years and up to not too long ago. And I think it's very important to understand that he's not trying to corroborate all this evidence. He's just saying that, I was a dumb young man and if we all can't admit that we at some point in our lives have done very stupid things for very stupid reasons, we're not, we're not looking at it the right way. I've made mistakes. I am the first person to admit that and to know that I'm not perfect. Man, if anybody looks at my record on paper, they would go, geez, this dude, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that it's not what I, have or believe inside of me or what I'm capable of. And so, yes, Joseph Smith was born in a time frame where treasure digging was very prominent and prevalent, and it was one of those things that he sought after because he enjoyed it and thought it was okay. And later we find out that it was, to get lucre or filthy lucre gain, and those things we understand now are very detrimental to our soul and to our forward progression. But it's just like learning anything else. It's like learning how to be a carpenter or, doing concrete. You're gonna do things that are detrimental to you. You'll smack your thumb with a hammer and, ouch, I'm not gonna do that again, and then you still do it. And it's like, yeah, it's a total learning process for man. And so again, to, state that it's an apologetic theory that, treasure digging isn't prevalent there. It is. It's very prevalent. It's because this item was of such value, or is of such value to so many people now, that we can look back in retrospect and see that he needed to use every single source and seasoned veteran, form, and ingredients, sorcery, whatever you want to call it, to have it come to fruition. And again, sometimes we have to do the wrong thing to have the right result. And this is a prime example of it. Joseph Smith, later regretted saying, the foibles of men and, being around the wrong company. He was just admitting that he was wrong for having, pursued these types of things. But in reality, it did all of us a favor. To cover the reason why Emma wasn't, it's the same thing I told you about the bank. If I'm going to take this stuff that's valuable and I'm, pulling off let's just call it a heist or, a treasure find, I'm going to take it and I'm going to hide it. And I'm not going to tell my wife where it's at, because then at that point, she is not only tempted to want to go get it and, betray me, but also, um, it's that, third time's a charm type thing. She wasn't prepared yet. She wasn't ready for it. She was ready to be Joseph's lookout, but to stand there and pray and do the things that she did was because she was looking out for him. And he put it in the hollow oak tree top, or in a hole, or whatever. Um, that's just another form of, I guess you could call it magic or sorcery or necromancy or treasure digging. It's to hide it from the eyes of other people. And, if somebody knows where it's at, they're going to go right to that spot. But if you move it away from that spot, they may not find it. It's kind of a ploy to hide it from eyes who are aware of it, such as Sam Lawrence or any of the other people that were on the hill. But it wasn't time to bring him down, because at that point, if he did do that, it could have been, they could have gotten in the wrong hands. And so he was told, do whatever it takes to make sure that these things get home. And then we know later he rushes home with them. And he actually, like, there's stories of him hiding it in the bins of flour and wheat in the barn. And just like, he had to do several things to keep these from filthy, lucre seeking men and the ploys of the devil. And unfortunately, again, bad things have to happen in order for a good result sometimes. And these were some of the things that within treasure digging, there is secrecy. There is a certain time and a certain way of doing it. And, there's, the list is long, but it's to make it be what it is. They're all ingredients, whether good or bad, and it's all in perspective. So again, to say, well, why couldn't Emma just walk up the hill with him and see it? Well, she wasn't ready. She was not. That wasn't her calling or her time. She later testifies to it, and we know that the three witnesses, each one of them had three different occurrences where they had to go through learning or figuring it out before they seen it, and then they never went away from that testimony of it. The rule of three testimonies, 3 different times. It's the truth. It can't be negated. And that's the same concept here. This particular gentleman asks, why couldn't Emma see the plates? She could dust under them and then translate them later. Again, she wasn't prepared yet. It's so funny how they sit and say these things are convoluted and made up, but it's so easy to see. She was the perfect accomplice to help him be safe and to be his lookout and, see what happened, to testify to it later, but only to a certain degree so that she didn't become involved with the actual treasure. It's kind of like if you rob the bank, you're gonna keep some information and tell her don't, you know, same thing. You're just not gonna go there. You're gonna keep that stuff within you because you don't want her to be implicated and into the situation and be, destroyed by it. So it's the same thing to sit there and say that, why would God do that? It's because each person is prepared at their specific time for their specific testimony or truth, witness. And it's the same thing as, understanding your compass and the steps that are going, on as you're headed on. It's important to point out that God is all knowing and not a God of confusion. And I think I've made, relevant point or context plausibility there. But again, I just want to testify to the fact that God is all powerful. He is all knowing. He knows what's going to take place and when and how. And man, as an instrument in his hands, is how that comes to fruition. Joseph Smith was simply a man who obviously at that time was treasure seeking and doing and the whole concept of, why couldn't God just made it simple and, never even brought it up? Well, then there wouldn't be any credibility to the story. All of these things that happened create credibility to understand that it was a real thing. That's that hard copy. It's just like if, I was to do that heist and get some kind of money from it or the treasure, I would secretly, find a way to launder the money or to, change it into something else that is of great value to me and anyone else in my world. So the same concept applies here. Joseph hid them in a log and did several different things to keep them from the evil people in the world who only wanted them for their purposes, not God's purpose. And so he was simply being obedient in doing these things and not, it's not to be understood that he was just being secretive and, you know, making up a story or props. I mean, goodness gracious, to think that he made these things up from plaques on barrels and stuff. Come on. I mean, that is just as childish as saying that. I don't even want to go there. I'm not that type of person, but it is so easy to understand that these are of such great value and worth to each and every one of us as an individual. And I encourage each and every one of you to read the Book of Mormon and to pray and to understand what's in it and how it testifies of our Savior Jesus Christ, and to apply it in your life and to pray and ask if it is a true book and if Joseph Smith was a prophet, because all of these key principles and due process is part of your journey. It's part of your compass in life. And so if we can't, we could sit there and stare at the needle and know what direction is north, but we don't want to walk it out or get there. It's all for naught. We're just holding the compass. The Book of Mormon is true, and it is another testament of Jesus Christ. It was written by several different people in several different civilizations. was compiled and hidden up in the Hill Cumorah, and it was retrieved by Joseph Smith and translated by the power of the gift of the Holy Ghost. And it is here today as a blessing to us because of the point of, logic being defied in Joseph and Emma, and then she comes to him and says, hey, caught wind that somebody's looking for that treasure. It's the same thing again. I'll use the bank reference. You know, your wife or whoever knows that you did it, whether if you share that information with anybody, it's going to always be seeking it. They're going to be looking and wanting to get gain from it. They're going to try to catch you in it. If it's not, your associates, it's the police, it's the bank owner, it's whoever. And so he has this new name, the stone, and each person gets this when they are righteous and following certain faith and ordinances. And the stone does allow you to see. It's the hard copy of that compass. It's that enzyme, the Leona, Urim and Thummim. It's each and every one of our individual ways to see the things of God. So to call it in our modern day times, it's a microscope or also a pager, a phone. When we're given certain news or like a message on our phone, we know how to react to that particular instance and control our narrative. Well, he simply had Emma come to him concerned that, these people are looking for this stuff, Joseph, you're gonna, you need to look out for it. And he looks and he sees that it's fine. It's because he was at one with the communication of God. He was able to see that they were still in the tree and that the foibles of men, I guess as we could call them, the people that were out searching for it aimlessly were probably on the prowl, absolutely. But he knew that everything was okay in his heart and in his mind. He was following his intuition. That's what the Urim and Thummim is that compass, that intuition. And God, through the Holy Ghost, sends that to you. You don't have to be where the physical hard copy is to see it, to know it's okay, that it still exists. It's just like if I robbed the bank and I buried the treasure, it's still, I know it's there. I guarantee it's there. But everyone else doesn't. And so it's a personal piece of information, and that's just the logic behind it. To say it's nonsensical is so, again, just shows the level of intelligence that or I guess I should say the lack of intelligence that exists within these particular people that are reviewing these things. I guess I should also rephrase, instead of saying a lack of intelligence, I should say a lack of faith, because, I mean, let's be honest, nobody's perfect. We all have perception and perspective and understanding, but the truth shall always prevail. And that's the point of this channel. Again, like, subscribe, comment, share stories. Um, we're on Facebook, Twitter, uh, Instagram, TikTok, all those ones. We're working on getting all those different platforms made up so that we can communicate with the masses. But again, this is a new trial and error process, just sharing, my opinions and understanding. And it's going to piss people off. And, it's just like the president of the United States. Not one person can please everyone. There's always going to be different views and angles. But I know that I am sharing what I know to be truth and understanding. And it's important for each of us to discern these things within yourself. If you are, feeling inside of you that what I'm saying is right, it's because it is. And if you think it's not, or you have some other type of, understanding, feel free to comment on it. I would love to see your understanding, and maybe we can talk it out and, get to an understanding together, and both of us walk away edified in the spirit. One thing I do know, and I'm just going to go ahead and disclaim now, is that that contention is of the devil. And when we contend one with another, we cannot reach common ground. There's going to be the voices of evil that are always interjected, and also the voices of good that come, from the Spirit and other sources also. So it's a never-ending battle of evil and good, good and evil. And this day and age, so many people are fulfilling that particular prophecy that says, in the latter days, many shall call good evil and evil good. Food for thought. Story time, just to kind of create some plausibility or context here. And apologize if I'm sweating and didn't get up to turn the thermostat down. When I was younger, I was a pretty strong kid. I grew up with my buddies, bench pressing, and, I remember being 10 years old and bench pressing 100 pounds. And, just remember reaching that milestone thinking, man, that's awesome. I'm so strong. And I just, I took weightlifting as a pretty serious deal. But my father, he also took weightlifting and was very talented and strong in his youth. And, he was in the school newspaper for having the record of, biceps and squats. I think he was, 150, 60 pounds, and he could bench press like 320, I think. And then his squat was 495 pounds. And, he told me that he used, inverted, techniques that were like, putting excessive weight on there that you can't handle and having two people spot you, and your goal is to bring it down as slow as you can and then force it up as best you can with help. And in doing those, it actually increases your muscle twitch. It's reverse osmosis, if you will. And I remember telling him one day, I had bench pressed like 275 and I weighed 200 or 195 at the time. And he just laughed at me and was like, I used to do those like upside down push-ups. And, I'd show him my bicep. He'd be like, that looks like a kneecap on a sparrow's leg. So shout out to my dad. I hope one day I can be even a fraction of how strong he is. And the funny thing is he says that about his dad, my grandpa. And I think it's just in our inner makings as, each and every one of us with our earthly fathers, we look up to them. They're like our Supermans. My father is that being for me, but he started his own concrete construction business, and he was doing a lot of the work himself, like I was, and he actually broke his back early on when he was remodeling our home when we first moved into it, and lifted a toilet in a hurry because my mother didn't want to use that toilet because it was nasty, and so he was trying to appease his wife, as men do, and lifted the toilet, and then shortly after he realized that, he couldn't walk, couldn't feel his legs, any of that stuff, kind of like I mentioned, but he literally broke his back and went into surgery, got out of surgery, and the surgeons had come and apologized and said, hey, I didn't realize that this was that bad. I'm so sorry. And, that you went through so much suffrage, and, they all just kind of chalked it up to, he's just got a herniated disc or something. And he literally had broke his back. And it was a scary thing for him. There was a lot of time down and in recovery trying to maintain a family. And, those of you who understand that sickening feeling is what he went through also. And, the crazy, situation here is that he was able to recover and get back to work, and, just the strengths that he has, it's crazy to think that I've had experiences similar to his. And if you see a video of me in the hospital, I did not handle it well. I was under some extreme pain, and I did not handle it well just from my tolerances and my understanding of pain. But, the fact of the matter is this, is he went back to work, and, later, having his own construction business, he was still doing other jobs on the side. And I've done the same thing. I've done a lot of roofs and vinyl fences and things. aside from concrete construction, just because they're just jobs that, people need done. And so I'm out there trying to go after any kind of work I can get. And, I'm on a roof, and my father in the 90s on my mother's birthday, I believe it was, 92 or 3, I can't remember, maybe 96, 97. Um, Sorry, I gotta get my dates right. See, it's easy to tell a story and have it be misconstrued or not know all the details or facts the right way. Case in point. Um, so I'm over helping my dad. I'm supposed to be over helping my dad. He's up on the roof with his buddy, and they're ripping the shingles off. And just so happened to be on my mother's birthday. And my mother, again, my dad's trying to please her, get down off of a roof and take her out and, celebrate her birthday with him. And she is, blowing him up and saying, geez, this is a joke. You should be home. And my dad was just trying to make ends meet for the family and life. And so, there's a hard balance with that. I think a lot of us can, uh, relate, but I was supposed to be, in the driveway shoveling piles of shingles and, getting rid of the material into the dumpster. And I refused to do so. I was upset. I wanted to have, my afternoon and play my PlayStation. Those had just come out at the time. And, I had, a couple different games that I was really into. And it's just like nowadays kids get into these games and they just are hypnotized and, they just don't pay attention to life. And it's a very, it can be a very bad thing. If it's not kept in moderation. So I got mad at him because he took my controls, my paddles, and wouldn't let me, have them because he wanted me there working and helping him. I refused, so I just went home and I, threw a fit in my room and waited for him to come home and give me back my paddles. Well, it started to rain, sleet, and snow, and he was trying to dry in the roof so that the family of the home that he was doing it for didn't have a leaky attic, the room upstairs. So he's in a hurry. Unfortunately, he wasn't tied off, and he was reaching out to try to, tack in the dry end paper, and he slipped. And as he slipped, he went towards the driveway where that pile was, where I was supposed to be. Tried to dig his cleat hammer into the roof to, grab some kind of an anchor like a mountaineer would or a glacier hiker or something. And it didn't dig and didn't catch, and so he flew off kind of down and away and lit onto the driveway. And this was a roof of a home, which is about 35 to 40 feet, 3 stories. He fell, broke his ankle in 7 places, his wrist in 7 places, 3 ribs in his pelvis, and dang near died. I'm sitting at home and I remember hearing the sirens and everything, blaring up the street and didn't think nothing really of it. But immediately, so one of the neighbors had come over and said something about, hey, have you seen the ambulances and stuff? And it all clicked. Crap, it's dad. And so I went running up the street and I remember the paramedics lifted him up off of the driveway and put him onto um, the neighbor's porch just to the north of it because it was raining and snowing and he was convulsing and he later told me he was trying so hard to just not die, to just breathe. And I just remember thinking, what if I'd have been there? What if I could have caught him? Broke his fall, I don't know, something. At least be the first person to call the paramedics. But I wasn't because of my selfish ways. And he fought hard. He made it through, luckily. Lots of surgeries, recovery out of external fixators, those things that, are out. It was a full blown, life threatening injuries, accident. And I apologize. It's kind of a hard topic to cover, but our family suffered dearly from that. But again, he was strong. He worked and recovered. I remember him having his concrete construction business and just trying to be up and on crutches and, still doing work when he should have been in the hospital bed for months. And he just was so strong that he knew, I've got to push through this. I've got to heal and I can't just lay here. And, he at that time had a very good source of help. And I guess the point of this story is to know that if you are trying to do what's right in God, God gives you help. He gives you angels, certain people, elements that help you fulfill what you're supposed to do. And so Joseph Smith, goes to the hill and they're saying, well, how can he possibly carry, 40-pound plates and run with one leg over logs and all that? It's easy. My father fell off a roof and couldn't perform the physical labors of concrete and construction. Well, a gentleman by the name of Gama, we'll call him, he used to be a boxer down in Mexico with Oscar de la Hoya, and he was an ox, literally, and a blessing. Around that time, my dad had a couple of guys, and myself and my buddy Cliff, who was working with him in summers and on-site jobs and stuff. And this particular guy, Gama, had come on to the scene from Mexico or wherever, just like other migrants do to find work. My dad, hired him on, and this guy was a godsend. He was an ox. Gama was boxing and training with Oscar de la Hoya, and he was also involved in some foibles of men. He was trying to, without saying too much, he was trying to smuggle drugs and fire extinguishers, and one of them, while they were stuffing him, exploded and ripped up his abdomen, and it wrecked his boxing career. He couldn't, the scars wouldn't heal, and the things just didn't go right for him. So he had to find work in another way, and he came to the States and found my dad and went to work. Well, he was the type of man that could literally pull two mucking rakes. And if anybody's done concrete and they've mucked or screeded concrete, it's heavy and it's not very easy to do. And, to get it flat and get it close and then screed, and get it all finished off and everything, this dude would pull mud with two rakes. He would, carry bundles of, 50 metal stakes on his shoulders, or 6 2 by 12 by 16-foot pieces of lumber on his shoulders and carry them and, put them on the trailer like it was carrying a stick, a popsicle stick. And it just goes to show that, there are ways, and we know from Joseph Smith history that he was a strong character. In those days, you had to be strong. You had to work, swing an axe, plow. I mean, these dudes were built way more than you or I are now. And this particular guy working in his shipping and logistics and stuff, to say you can't carry a box, well, that's each and every one of our individual build. You know what I mean? So to say that he wasn't capable of doing it is not plausible, but or feasible to even bring up. But Gama helped my dad during this time where he needed more effort or employee or I guess you could call it service or help to get his things done. And it's the same thing with the Lord. Joseph Smith was being prepared for this type of thing in his life. His bum leg and the instances where he was able to keep his leg, all those are signs and things that show, if you look at it with an eye of faith, that God was preserving him in his calling. And he was able to run down the hill and, deflect these particular people that were pursuing it. So I tell you this story to, again, relate that, it's important for us to know that God is in control. He's all powerful. And if it's not his hand that's doing it, it's his hand directing those particular angels or things or people or variables so that it does come to pass. And we have history upon history of these things in the Bible and in the Book of Mormon, um, in Doctrine and Covenants, everywhere. There's stories of people that were able to do things that they just weren't able to do on their own. And again, comment, subscribe, tell stories. I would love to hear them. I love it. I bask in the joy of understanding where, those things come from. And it's God, it's truth, it's His power, He's the source of all things. Don't forget to turn on your notifications. Again, I'm very grateful for this opportunity and I give God all the credit. I really do. I don't want to be, known as, Rambo and that I, am just this particular cat that doesn't know, anything really. I'm just a man, speaking my mind, but, it's very important to see that there is so many different ways, that we can look at things, and it's important to look at it with the spirit. The terminology of anachronistic or anachronistic works or scriptures or whatever, there is a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for, adequate evidence that there has been or was ancient writings on gold plates. In fact, they just found some in Saudi Arabia, and we're not claiming, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not claiming that they are of any specific importance to what we already have. They are just there. And that shows in history that somewhere along the lines, civilizations have written on gold plates. And we know this from other books that exist, such as the Book of Mormon. The Bible is literally a compilation of old writings on stone, apocrypha, sheets of paper, gold plates, all of it's a compilation. And there have been, several different instances, and I'll share them in the video here, that is proof that these artifacts exist all over the world and that were used as their source of writing and journal work. And so to say that it's a convoluted theory or an idea is completely childish again, to think that, the things that, just because in our day and age we use a computer or a MacBook or a Microsoft Word to create our writings, it goes with the time period, the technology that's available. And there's the key factor that it's just the importance of jotting them down. Man is again flawed and very weak, but God has His way of retaining the important doctrine and knowledge to pass it on to future generations. And we know very well that metal is far less corrosive and capable of corrosion or disappearing. And a piece of paper can get burnt in the fire. There have been stories in the books and the Bibles and even in Germany, them tossing books in piles and burning them. And there's a big history about the library of all the books that were very important getting burnt. And, it's very easy to understand, but, these are the methods that were used, and we know it from Egyptian times clear back into, the times of Moses and there's no sense in beating a dead horse, but yes, metal plates and brass plates, tin, gold, whatever the chemical makeup of them are. Gold we know is easily impressed. Chew it or bite it to test of its, purity. And things that are on them are pure and truth, so the symbolism there is very important to take into consideration. They are of such extreme value that, of course, they would be written on gold or brass, something that is eternal. It's the point there. So to again use acronistic terminology and think that it's not plausible or feasible is just a lack of understanding. In closing, again, like, comment, subscribe. P.J.P. Ramble 4T. Let's just preach Jesus and praise Him, proclaim His name, His gospel. He is the cornerstone. He is the compass, the ensign, the wherewithal, in everything. And I want to just apologize for any condescending remarks or anything that may be taken the wrong way from viewers. Um, I am only speaking as a man, and I am a flawed man, but I do want to um, just kind of offer up prayer and pray for these individuals who I am, reviewing and giving content from, and just let them know and you know as a listener that I am nowhere near perfect. My understanding is incomplete, and I do have erroneous ways that I live my life and things that I need to fix. And I am just trying to point my compass due north and receive light and knowledge along the way and share it with others. So please forgive me if I have offended or um, done wrong by relating to God and Jesus Christ and then to, childish remarks. But Heavenly Father, bless everyone who's listening to this video and anyone who is questioning where to find truth, that they may be able to find their own compass and their own guidance. This particular content can be of an ensign to someone somewhere and help them realize that they are right, that they are following the gospel, and they are believing in truth. Um, I pray for those who are against thy will and thy work, and I pray that they may someday, some way, somehow find peace and be able to find forgiveness for having done things as a natural man enemy to be. We are grateful for His Son Jesus Christ, His atoning sacrifice, and for making it possible. Without Him, we are all basically out of luck. And I thank you for having loved us enough to send us a Savior to teach us and keep us pointed due north, as a beacon of truth and light, and to understand thy will. Please bless those who are seeking knowledge to understand if Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon are true figures and objects, that they may find in their heart that it is the case. Joseph Smith was a prophet, and the Book of Mormon was written and provided for us in the latter days. This prayer does not only apply to myself and the listeners, but to everyone in this world, all of us, thy children. Be with us, watch over us, and protect us, and continue to give us light and knowledge, line upon line, precept upon precept, as we seek thee and thy Son in our everyday lives. In the name of Jesus Christ. It's been a pleasure. Uh, there's going to be some learning process for me, a learning curve to, edit and please forgive my frailties and my imperfections and just take away what you can with what I've given. Um, Judge not, lest we be judged, right? Thank you. And again, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys. In the meantime, remember to be the source. Due north, truth shall always prevail.